All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to do something a little different, something really special actually. We're going to step inside the creative process and see how a book gets shaped, how it gets challenged, and ultimately how it gets stronger because of critical feedback. Yeah, check out this quote from the author. It just perfectly captures what this project is all about. The book's called The Goldilocks Journey, and it's this really raw, vulnerable memoir about trying to navigate the chaos of, life's messy middle. So what happened was the author shared the first couple of chapters with us, and, well, we gave some pretty sharp feedback. Now they've gone back and revised the work, and we get to see how that whole conversation played out on the page. And look, this isn't really just about this one book. It's bigger than that. It's about the creative process itself, right? How does a creator take tough feedback, and trust me, some of it was tough, and use it to make their work better? So let's start with what we first thought. Okay, so in our first review, we saw a really powerful, really vulnerable story there. I mean, the potential was huge, but we felt it was seriously at risk of just failing. And that was because of three major structural flaws right at the beginning. So our feedback basically boiled down to three core critiques. First, the pacing and density. Chapter 2 was this monster, like 6,400 words, just way too much. Second, the hook was weak. It opened with this low-stakes childhood story that just killed any sense of urgency. And third, the main framework, these polarity concepts, they just felt tacked on, not really integrated into the story. These weren't small things, They were fundamental issues. So let's see how the author responded. And this is where it gets really fascinating. The author didn't just take our feedback and do exactly what we said. Nope. They really engaged with it. They revised things thoughtfully, and in one case, they came back with this brilliant counter-proposal that was honestly better than what we suggested. Okay, first up, they went straight for that framework problem. Our big critique was that the book's core ideas, these 7 polarities of life, they just felt like labels that were slapped on at the end of a chapter. The revision, it completely fixes this. It weaves that language right into the fabric of the story itself. And you can see the change so clearly right here. The original text just says, I was burned out from overwork. I mean, okay, who hasn't felt that? But look at the revision. The work/rest polarity had collapsed entirely. I'd abandoned one pole for the other. See? It transforms this generic statement into a sharp, specific insight using the book's own unique language. This was a direct hit, a totally successful fix based on our feedback. All right, but what about that huge, dense second chapter? Remember, our advice was pretty straightforward, just split it in two. And honestly, this was our biggest concern. A 6,400-word chapter at the start of a book, that's a massive risk. It just asks way too much from the reader, way too soon. We figured, hey, the simple solution is just to cut it in half. But the author's response was, well, it was way more sophisticated than that. Instead of just chopping the chapter up and breaking that narrative flow, they came up with this much more elegant solution. They kept the chapter whole, but they gave the reader a map. And this right here is the author's brilliant move. They give readers multiple paths through the book. So if you're a linear reader, you can just read the whole thing. If you're in crisis mode, you can jump straight to the tools. If you're looking for the theory, you can go there. Or if you just want the memoir, you can do that too. They totally addressed our concern about the density, but not by dumbing it down. They made its complexity intentional and user-friendly. It's just smart. So the crucial thing here is that this is just a fantastic example of a creator intelligently pushing back on a critique with a better idea. They heard the problem, hey, this is too dense, but they invented their own solution that respected their original vision. Okay, let's move on to the last point, the hook. Right. So we argued for a really high-impact, high-stakes opening. Start with a crisis, like that scene where they get laid off. But the author, they decided to stick with their quieter, more thematic opening about vacuuming as a kid. Their reasoning was that this slow build is absolutely essential to understanding how these life patterns get formed in the first place. And you know what? This shows a creator who listens, but in the end, trusts their own gut, their own narrative instincts. So after looking at all of this, these thoughtful revisions, these direct fixes, and these really intelligent counterarguments, what's our final verdict on these opening chapters? This is really the moment of truth for any work in progress, isn't it? Has this whole back and forth between the creator and the critic actually made the thing better? The answer is an unequivocal yes. Absolutely. The book is so much stronger, it's more coherent, and frankly, it's more useful now as a direct result of this whole process. The author really took the critique to heart and just elevated the manuscript. I mean, these changes genuinely transformed the opening. The framework is deeper now. That polarity language is a real diagnostic tool. The structure is elegant. Those multiple reading paths are a brilliant solution. And the book's promise is so much clearer. It's both a compelling memoir and a useful guide. Plus, the way the author engaged with feedback, it's a model for other creators. What felt like a flawed gem before now feels polished and purposeful. It makes a clear promise to the reader, and it actually has the structure to deliver on it. Okay, let's just zoom out for a second for the big takeaway here, because this entire process, it's just a perfect metaphor for the book's own central theme. See, the author writes all about navigating the messy middle of life, of careers, of failure, of learning. But what we've just watched unfold right here is the messy middle of creation. This is the real work right here, receiving feedback, wrestling with it, and then choosing how to respond. It's not about just blindly accepting every note someone gives you. It's about that thoughtful, sometimes really difficult dialogue between your original vision and a critical outside eye. That negotiation, that's where the magic really happens. And look at this quote. The transformation is happening through the writing, not before it. The author's own journey of revision proves their point. The very act of refining and documenting the story is what created the clarity in the first place. So the book isn't just a report on some past transformation. The writing of it is an act of transformation in itself. And that's really the question we want to leave you with. If documenting a pattern is what accelerates change, what pattern in your own work, or even your own life, is just waiting to be made visible? This process shows that making a pattern visible, whether it's in your life or in a manuscript, that's the first step to truly transforming it. Thanks for joining us.